Well, what it do, golf fans? Welcome back to the Turn Dogs Golf Podcast. This is Liam. Alongside me is Jack. Jack is fist pumping because we had a pretty good golf tournament last week. We've got 1 week until a very good golf tournament, but we're not there yet. So we can't
Very
get too
good.
yeah we can't get too close. He has been screaming Georgia into my ear for just the last like 17 years. Uh,
Yeah, and speaking of that, I don't know who Noah Kahan is. Why are they putting him in the commercial? It's
no,
so
no,
dumb.
Noah Khan probably didn't want to do that himself, but unfortunately, money is money. So whoever signed him up for that screwed him over. And I will stand on business for that one. But Jack, we were at the Children's Houston Open last week in Memorial Park, Houston, Texas. Minwoo Lee, 72nd hole, 80-foot putt to about what'd you say, 9 inches?
Less than that, and then he did aim point on the 72nd. It was the greatest thing I've ever seen.
It looked like he did that to kind of mock the people that do that aim point. Let's be clear on that. Like, I don't think it didn't look very malicious, needless to say. So I think there needs to be a note on that. I think that was more of a comedy bit than anything else. It
Yeah,
seemed like
you saw Scotty Scheffler laughing about it, signing his card.
yeah. So I'm sure there were some jokes made on that one. But I mean, overall thoughts on the week. What were you thinking?
Yeah, I think it was awesome that Min Woo Lee won the game. I'm an old head, so take this with a grain of salt. I think that it's really good for the young generation to see Min Woo Lee win. I
Hmm.
was pulling for Gary Woodland so hard. For those of you who don't know Gary Woodland's story, obviously he's a major champion who won at Pebble at the U.S. Open, but did have brain surgery to remove lesions inside of his brain. And a lot of COVID golfers don't know the length that he had to go through to come back to the PGA Tour, and Gary Woodland's a staple, even with only 4 career wins on the PGA Tour. For him to have that success and grind through that and come back on a course where he historically can't really get to 20 under, got to 19 under and played really well. It was awesome to see. Um, I think it was awesome to see Scotty in the mix, Rory in the mix, and a bunch of guys kind of pushing the needle. I love competitive golf. It's like March Madness last weekend. There were way too many upsets, or blowouts rather. It's hard to watch the second half of a basketball game when they're down 16. Same
Yeah.
thing, guys up 3. It's awesome. It was electric. Minwoo Lee, congratulations. You finally broke through on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, first win of the year for Minwoo. I am curious, and this again, you can tell me this is a dumb question. I don't mind. But if Gary is to come back and win another tournament, is there any route that he can make the Golf Hall of Fame? Or is he already in the Golf Hall of Fame in your opinion? I mean, that was my thought as well. I didn't think so either, but I was like, maybe there's an out pocket, crazy example that he is. Um, but is there anything he could do? I mean, if you won like a major, like if you won the PGA or something like that, is there a way that he could somehow make the Golf Hall of Fame?
No, I don't think so. I think he has to win 2 majors and at least 6 more PGA Tour events and
Oh
at
wow.
least a major to even scratch a consideration. Gary
Got it.
Woodland's a legend, but
Okay. All right. I'm just curious on that because I kind of sat there and I was like, let me see, if it makes sense to throw that out there. But no, that's fair. Again, you commented Minwoo Lee was the winner. It was funny. There was actually a lot of really good names up top outside of Minwoo Lee, including Gary Woodland. Scotty Scheffler was also right there. Sammy Valimaki was also right there. Rory wasn't that far off. It was funny. I said this last week about Scotty and Rory. I said, I think they will both finish top 10 in this event. So just take whichever golfer you think is in better form and go from there. And it turns out they both finished top 5. So my theory was right. Unfortunately, I took Rory, who finished 5th. Scotty, I think, finished like 2nd. In reality, it's a matter of like 2 points, I'm pretty sure, on DraftKings. So I don't think much changed. I also said this about Minwoo Lee, which is pretty funny. I said he's an interesting option this week because this is one thing he's trying to do is still trying to plug his approach play. This is a course that relies on approach much less than an average PGA Tour course. And with Minwoo Lee's strong putting and short game, I think he could be a great differential option this week if you want to go somewhere different. If you're looking for a nice winner's pick, I would go with Minwoo. And then sure enough, winner. So it turns out every once in a while, I do hit the nail on the head, which is pretty funny. But any other thoughts before I get into the notable guys to miss the cut, low priced options we were all over, things like that?
now just crazy week. I loved
Yeah.
it. I don't care about any golf until now between April 9th.
Yeah, Jack is basically mentally taking a break for the Valero this week, but we'll get into that. Some notable guys to miss the cut in Houston. Alex Smalley, Aaron Rye, Seamus Power, Nick Taylor, Nikolai Højgaard, Thorbjorn Olesen, Doug Gim, JJ Spawn. I mean, what, Mark Hubbard, maybe? I don't know. There's a few there that are probably lower tiered, but not a ton of crazy names. I know JJ Spawn was the highest owned of the three. Some low priced options that we were all over. Mac Meisner we liked, who finished T39. I was high on Lee Hodges, who finished T11. Jack was high on Sammy Valimaki, who finished fourth. And then I like Nico Echevarria, who finished T32, which I think he was like mid 6K pricing. So at that point, I would be pretty happy with him there.
Yeah, I just put my notes in the doc. I also want to highlight minimum price Ryan Fox, who finished 15th, who I said was like one of three guys in the top 100 of 20 of the OWGR in that price. And also Harris English, who finished 18th. So those are two other guys that I was pretty high on in the low prices. And unfortunately, Nate Lashley made the cut.
Yeah, Nate Lashley missed the cut, which is a sad day for Jack. But it happens every once in a blue moon, he's going to have to make one, Jack. It's just, at least he's making that one and not one at like the Masters. That would piss you off a lot more. I know he's never qualifying. He's never qualifying. I know. Some of the misses for us this week, I was high on Aaron Rye and Alex Smalley. They both missed the cut. Jack, I'm going to say this. I don't know if it's fully true. I think you were pretty high on JJ Spawn, and he missed the cut.
Yeah, I don't know if high is the right word, but I had him in one bet. But
well, that's the same thing with me and Aaron Rye. I had him in one bet, so I'm like eh. So I don't know. Well, it's the point being. On to DraftKings and FanDuel. How'd your lineups do last week?
I lost everywhere. I had three guys miss the cut in both lineups, and the rest of the three were all top 30s. So it was a very unfortunate ranking for the kid.
It's pretty funny. Mine was almost identical. I had 3 missed the cut on DraftKings. I had 2 missed the cut on FanDuel. Everybody else, was like top 30 or maybe top 32. I forget where that cutoff was because I had Maverick McNeely and Michael Kim, who both finished T32. But yeah, just a super funny setup in that sense. So yeah, nothing too fancy as far as FanDuel and DraftKings for us then. On to bets. How'd your bets do last week?
We did really well. The bet that was the craziest, which was the top 3 guys to make the cut, somehow lost. Scotty, Rory, and JJ Spawn. I physically wasn't even thinking about that, and I checked PGA Tour app on Friday afternoon, and I was dumbfounded to see what I saw. Other than that, we had a 5-unit play on Maverick McNeely making the cut, which was also a sweat. He was even par after like 24 holes. I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is ridiculous. Pulled it out, finished 30th or 32nd. Dietrich making the cut. That was another one. Keith Mitchell, top 48 in ties, was minus 120. And then I had Grazerman, top 40, also missed. So up 1.83 units, bringing us to 3.37 on the year, which is a disgustingly low total.
Yeah. As far as my bets go, I had 2 wins and 3 losses. I had Alex Smalley, top 40, which he had hit in, I think, 7 straight tournaments. And of course, he misses the cut, so that's a loss. I had Jacob Bridgman over Sung Jae Im. That was a loss. And then I had Aaron Rye over Davis Thompson. That was a loss. My 2 wins were Rory McIlroy, top 10 at plus 110, and Michael Kim, top 40 at plus 105. So overall, I am down 0.85 units on the week, but I am still up 16.28 units on the year. So we're cruising along. If I can just continue to get no lower than like 15 units up, then that'll be great. But again, right now I'm just happy that I'm in a pretty good spot. So yeah. Wild card, did yours hit or no?
No, I had Jacob Bridgman top 10 at plus 375, and I think he missed the cut. So
there you go. Mine didn't do much better. I had Davis Riley top 30 at plus 200. I think he finished like T47 or T52 or one of those. But he was not top 30, so that was a loss. I'm now 9 wins, 12 losses on wild cards, so not awful. On to winners picks. How's your winners do?
Not great. Grazerman and McGreevy, who I thought were going to eat up this course, both missed the. Wow, I just had a mini heart attack in my mouth. Max Grazerman and Max McGreevy both missed the cut, even though I thought they were going to dominate. And I had Maverick McNeely 55-1, finished 30th or 32nd, so not great.
Yeah, that's fair. A lot of my winners didn't do much better. Smalley missed the cut. Nick Taylor missed the cut, but I did take Minwoo Lee. That marks our fourth outright winner of the season. Jack had been kind of carrying for a few wins there, so I had to make sure I picked one. And nice 35-1 odds if you took them before the start. So that's a nice one, fourth one of the year. So nice little win on an otherwise kind of meh week for me. So we'll take it. All right. With that, on to Valero. Unless you want to continue to talk about Houston, because
I barely want to talk about this event.
We can sit here and talk about this past event and this next event for the next like 3 weeks because I know there's nothing else better going on, right? So Jack and I were talking, and we can dig into this a little bit. We were discussing. There's a lot of discourse on social media right now about whether Luke Clanton should be included in the Masters field or not. I think we are both of the same assumption that if he doesn't qualify, he shouldn't be in the field.
Masters the guidelines for the Masters are so cut and dry. And the fact that they've done, even over the last couple years, exceptions for guys that have been even in live, for them to do that is crazy. Chairman Ridley theoretically could do something. I don't think he will, because at the end of the day, names and storylines don't make anything. And no offense to anybody under the age of 17, Luke Clanton is not moving the needle for Augusta National. Miley Cyrus is going to tune in on Sunday. Regardless of Luke Clanton is in or not, you're going to have it on the background on Sunday afternoon. Luke Clanton is not going to move the needle. Although I love the kid, he is awesome. He has many of these to come in the future. He's not going to be in this event.
And remind me, because I was going through some of the numbers in my head. So he was the number one ranked amateur, but he lost that because he got his PGA Tour card like 4 or 5 weeks ago, correct? So he doesn't qualify through that route.
Well, there's a couple different ways, and I won't spend all the time in the world because there's like 100 different ways you can qualify for the Masters.
Yeah.
Number one AM is in qualification. Now, I haven't studied up on this because literally I just found out 10 minutes before we started recording that Luke Clanton wasn't in that number one amateur spot anymore. So I don't know if it was relinquished because of that or because he did receive his PGA Tour card for making that last cut, that it would drop down to number two. I'd have to do more research. But he also is, I don't even think in the US AM, US match play. He definitely wasn't in the US AM or isn't. And I just think it's the right call, albeit a little disappointing, but it's the right call.
Yeah, I mean, I think the important part is that if he was going to be in this, if he like really wanted to be in the field, he would have had to rely on a few different things, and like getting your PGA Tour card and choosing to do that and doing everything else. Like, if your only route that you were ever going to be able to do it was through the AM spot, then like
He's like 18 years old. He's got plenty of time.
I know he's going to have like 25 more Masters once his time comes, so he'll be all right. But again, people really wanted to see him in the Masters, and unfortunately, he won't be. So
yeah, the only reason we're bringing this up now is because obviously selection and qualification, barring a win from somebody this week, is done. So the top 50 of the OWGR, Michael Kim got in by the skin of his teeth. Ben Griffin was 51st on the mark by 0.0076 OWGR points, which is one placement point over the last 4 weeks of any tournament. That is one shot, ladies and gentlemen.
I feel bad for Ben Griffin, but admittedly, I am a bit of a Michael Kim fan, and I do love him as far as social media goes. He's a pretty
good social media guys, because Ben Griffin does some really good TikToks and behind the scenes.
He's the TikTok guy. I feel like Michael Kim is the like the Twitter guy more so, where he'll get into. What's up?
He replaced Max Homa, but like PG version.
Yeah. So there's definitely some social media fans amongst the two of them. So in theory, I'd love both of them to show up, but it doesn't make sense. So with that, we'll dig more into Master stuff next week. Let's go Valero, Texas Open. We are at TPC San Antonio. This is a par 72 totaling 7,430 yards. What's kind of interesting about Valero, the back nine is actually significantly easier than the front nine. 4 of the last 5 holes all average under par and are some of the easiest on the golf course, which will probably come into effect, as far as Friday made cuts go. Also, whether somebody's starting on 10 or 1 will be a pretty significant thing to note. If somebody's starting on 1, they're going to end on the easiest holes. If they start on 10, they will finish on some of the harder holes. So this is kind of something important to keep an eye on throughout especially beginning of the week. Beyond that, this is an extremely tour average golf course. It's really nothing like crazy that stands out. There's no specific stat that you need to really win here. Obviously, strokes gained approach is going to be extremely highly valued. And putting is always beneficial, but there's not any like major stat that's going to prevail amongst all the rest. Of the 14 non-par 3 holes, distance is more valuable than accuracy on any of them. So bomb and gouge will be successful here this week as a strategy. So, and it's basically you can blow it left or right into the trees, and you're not going to be too hurt when it comes to all that. Beyond that, Jack, any other thoughts? Are we getting right into DraftKings pricing?
Yeah, I would just say there's two different things to look out for. Number one is you will see a lot of lower tier guys, and I don't even mean to say this like in a rude way, but like Ricky Fowler does not qualify for the Masters. He is going to be attacking every single pin that he can, and his variance this week is going to be very large. So take that into consideration. And a lot of these guys like the Corey Connors, Hideki, Spieth, Ludwig Gobert that already have qualifications into this event, or excuse me, into the Masters, are really going to be fine-tuning their game. And it's not necessarily to mitigate or negate what's going on in the Valero, but if they feel that they need to work on a cut shot for next week, you better believe that every single iron shot in their bag is going to be a cut, and there could be a little bit of variance there. So there's a reason why you see the number one guy in this event being 10,800 instead of 11,800. So just keep that in mind when you're building your DFS lineup, that there's going to be a lot of different variants this week.
Speaking of, we do all of our daily fantasy through DraftKings, so we'll follow DraftKings pricing. So with that being said, we have 4 names in the 10,000 range on DraftKings. We have Ludwig Gobert at 10,800, down to Corey Connors at 10,100. Jack, what are your thoughts on the 4 guys in this range?
I think that's honestly 1 through 4 in terms of rank wise. Not necessarily what I think will win, but I think it's honestly really balanced top 4, which I haven't been able to say for a long time, especially starting at 10-8. But I think Corey Connors is going to be a very, very popular pick, but a right pick in terms of what he can do on this course. Now, historically, he hasn't really broken the mold. Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at his course history, he does really, really well, ranking at the top of a lot of metrics here, averaging finishing placement of 17 with 2 wins and a 25, 14, 35, and 26 and other starters. So obviously he has a ton of success here, ball striking metrics, and most importantly, as Liam mentioned, the one metric being strokes gained approach. Corey Connors, when he's on with his irons, is a Colin Morikawa or a prime Tiger Woods Walmart version, which is a incredible compliment. It is not a diss. He is remarkable. I think he's being very underlooked this week by a lot of, they call them cappers in the gambling community, but a lot of tippers will say bet on Corey Connors because his like top 30 odds are not really crazy. And he's done this in 5 of his last 6 stretches. So you can really take a look at him. I think Ludwig Gobert needs this week more so for confidence than anything else. Sandwiched between his win and his 22nd has been a 96, 79, and a sneaked by cut made at the Farmers, which should have been an event that he obviously did well at. He didn't make the cut there. He withdrew. Scary. Patrick Cantlay is a weird play this week. It's so weird because he's been so consistent. He's been flying under everybody's radar. I can't see anywhere where I've seen Patrick Cantlay, but I said 2 minutes before we recorded this episode that this is going to be an event. No one is talking about Patrick Cantlay. It's such a blech golf course in terms of like what the stats hold up. He could come out and win this by 3 shots. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's talking about him, but he's also like the 3rd most expensive player in this field. So like at a certain extent, like he doesn't need much discussion. Like nobody's talking about Hideki either. And like, so like he could also go out and win this golf tournament, but like, I don't know. Patrick Cantlay still doesn't put 4 good rounds together most of the time. So like I can only trust him as far as that stat takes me because it's held true for the last feels like 12 months. I'll highlight some of the stuff that Jack went over. Corey Connors has 3 straight top 10 performances where he's gained in all statistical strokes gained categories. He's also won here twice. He's got 4 other T35 or better finishes in his other 4 starts here. I will say this, when Corey Connors is a top 5 most expensive price person in a field, he actually tends to struggle in those tournaments. He's got finishes of T6, which is good, miscut, T7, T74, T50, and then T22. So he's pretty middling when it comes to that as far as his 6 most expensive pricings in the past 12 months. He does play really good for this event. I don't hate going to him, but I actually like Tommy Fleetwood a lot more. He hasn't finished worse than T22nd since August of 2024 at the Open. That's 13 straight starts now. He has also not lost a strokes gain metric outside of putting during that time frame either, which is crazy. He played here one time. He finished T7. I think he's a very good option here this week. He's going to want his game all lined up for the Masters next week. I actually think he can be really good at the Masters too. I think Ludwig Aubert is statistically the best player in this field the past 12 months. He's both long off the tee and accurate, which will be a big help for him. He has lost on approach, like Jack kind of stated, with some of his finishes in 3 of his last 4. But he's played here 2 times. He missed the cut when he was an amateur in 2022. And then last year he finished T14. I think he is a solid option to go to. And if for whatever reason people want to overlook him and keep saying he's playing bad, then it's valid. I think it's valid to get to him and play him this week.
Yeah, just the only fear for it. I don't think this is I need to come out and win this event. And again, for anybody that doesn't know me personally, I freaking hate storylines. I think they're stupid. Yeah. They don't change anything. That's why ESPN's in the trash can. Go back to old Sports Center if you ask me. But Ludwig Aubert, I really think needs to put 4 mistake-free rounds in. And I think that's what a confidence round is go out there, make your really good pars, convert on your birdies when you need to, make those saves when you need to. And I know that sounds very straightforward, like every single golf round should be that way. But going to an event where it's mistake heavy and mistake mitigating heavy, he needs to put 4 solid rounds together. So I don't think Ludwig Aubert is going to, and I'm not saying that he can't go out and win this by 7 shots. I don't think he's going to attack flags. I think he's going to do a lot of target golf to really prepare himself. And I think we're going to see a lot of pars. So I don't see Ludwig Aubert in this limelight. I think his placement was like 16th or better. I don't see him beating that, but obviously he has the skills to do it. I just don't see him doing that for next week.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Again, don't get me wrong. He's not playing his best golf of all time the last 2 or 3 weeks, but one of them was a withdrawal due to injury, or was it injury or sickness, whichever one he had recently.
No, he had the flu. I'm just kidding around.
Well, he had the flu, and then he was also like injured something, quote unquote. So it's all gimmicky. But again, I think he's going to want to be in good form going into the Masters. He played well in the Masters last year. He's got 1 week to do it. So I don't mind taking the chance this week and hoping that this is the week for him. So we'll see. So I take it your top 3 is what? Corey Connors, Fleetwood, or maybe Cantlay, Connors, Fleetwood, or?
Yeah, just in terms, again, for anybody that doesn't know me, hi, my name is Jack. I'm an addict of the Masters, and you will already hear that. I've already mentioned it 16 times and done more eloquent vocabulary when it comes to everything golf. I just don't see Ludwig going at it the way he needs to win this event. I think for me, it's Cantlay, Fleetwood, or excuse me, Cantlay, Connors, Fleetwood, Cantlay.
Okay.
I think, to your point, Tommy Fleetwood is a very sneaky pick for the Masters, and if, as of this recording, top 10 odds have come out, I think that could be a flyer pick. Cantlay just the same, because Cantlay, statistic-wise, I'll stop talking about the Masters. I won't.
No, I know. Don't worry. I already went through and made sure to remove your Tiger Woods top 40 or made cut line on the Masters that you had preset at the start of the year. Now that he's out. What's up?
You mean winner's pick?
Well, you had his made cut as a bet, just preset into your bets. Yeah, I already removed it. Don't worry. After he injured himself, or he got the injury. All right. So you said Fleetwood, Connors, Cantlay. I'm gonna go Fleetwood, Aubert, Connors. But I prefer probably Fleetwood and Aubert over the 2. So we just got different ideas on that one. But it sounds like we both like Fleetwood. So maybe that's the ground we would recommend you guys start with. So into the 9K ring. What? That's true. We both.
You mixed my order up, but it's fine.
You wanted what? Fleetwood, Connors, Cantlay.
Connors first.
Oh, Connors, Fleetwood, Cantlay. Fleetwood's beating him this week. I'll go head to head on that one. All right, on to the 9K range. Hideki Matsuyama, 9,900, down to Denny McCarthy at 9,000.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. It is another Jordan Spieth week, and I love Jordan Spieth. I'm emotional about him, but we talked about him last week. No,
Probably 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, whatever the frickin' Valspar was.
Yeah.
I told you guys, I was like, listen, he's not going to come out here and win, but he's going to finish top 40, and he was really reasonably priced. Now you're coming into his neck of the woods, and historically, he's played really well. Actually, he won here a couple of years ago. If you really take a look at the stat sheet, this can be an event he really targets. Now, last year he finished 10th. The 2 years before he finished 35th, sandwiched between a win was another 30th. This is a spot that he brings a lot of confidence and a lot of knowledge to. And I say the word confidence a lot. Now he's going into another course next week. I won't mention that he has a lot of confidence and a lot of history about. But Jordan Spieth is quickly returning to the old golfer that he was. And he's going and mitigating a lot of these changes. And I think we're really reflecting it this year and really seeing a healthy Jordan Spieth, because last year that wrist plagued him. He couldn't get rid of it. He wanted to play in these events, mostly to stay in those elevated events because he wanted to make some moolah, which I can't blame. Now he's healthy and going to a course where he's done really well historically. And he's fairly, honestly, pretty reasonably priced. But he's also got Hideki Matsuyama. And Hideki Matsuyama, I think you alluded to a little bit earlier, not a lot of people are talking about him. And that's because he sucked at the Players, which was the first really, really big event outside of like the Sony when everyone's really excited for golf. But inside of a withdrawal due to injury, he's got a 7th, a 15th, and a 30th place finish. This is a golf course that rewards a lot of iron shots, a lot of ball striking, which, again, you mentioned earlier is a really good strength of his. We watched him just lose his marbles at the Players' Championship. He was all over the place. Now we're going into a course where I think you said 15 minutes ago, you could be behind a tree and still make par. And for Hideki Matsuyama in the current form that he has, I think it'd be really good. I'm going to continue talking about basically everybody here, but Denny McCarthy is going to have a dot on every single person's radar this week. Denny McCarthy and Akshay Bhatia, who is also in this range, had a neck-to-neck battle where Akshay Bhatia had a sports scientist rearrange his shoulder on the 72nd hole, which was hilarious.
The playoffs.
Well, he had it on the fist bump on the 72nd hole.
Oh, yeah. Any of the sports psychologists come out on the playoff hole. Yeah.
And Denny McCarthy otherwise has had 4 top 20s in his last 5 starts. So he's really hot. He's building off momentum. This is a course where he should be able to ball strike and capitalize on the putter. And then don't sleep on Daniel Berger. Daniel Berger has historically sucked at this course. And I mean really bad. Like, he's in the bottom 25 of golfers that have played this event at least once. And that's really scary for how caliber he is. But he's done in the last 5 weeks, runner-up 12, 25, 15, and 20, all different styles of courses, from Waste Management to the Genesis to API and the Players. This is an event that those mistakes that Daniel Berger historically makes can be mitigated, but he can also blow up. So it's a really weird play for me, but just riding off momentum, Daniel Berger's a hot guy.
Yeah, I mean, you highlighted most of the guys in the range, but you said everything I would have said on Hideki. I think, again, if he's healthy, if he plays 4 rounds, if he's like Hideki of normal, I think he's a good option, 9,900. The only challenge is you might get an injury Hideki, you might get a withdrawal Hideki, you might get a, prep for the Masters Hideki. So there's a few different Hidekis that I'm worried about this week. Therefore, I don't know if I get to him, but I don't hate him in this range. You mentioned Spieth. It's kind of an interesting spot for him. We're in Texas where he figures out his golf game really well. He's played here at least 8 times. He's got 4 top 10 finishes, including the win in 2021. The issue is that his putter is basically brutal. He's lost in 7 of his last 9 starts. He's also lost in 6 of the last 9 starts with his irons as well. So there's not a lot of consistency. Bear in mind, I need everybody to clip that from like 3 to 5 minutes ago when Jack talked about Jordan Spieth, and he also talked about, who was the other guy you liked? Was it Hideki? But you commented that this is a great sequence for him. That's Jack highlighting course history, which Jack never highlights course history. So
except for one course, which is next week.
Yeah, if he highlights course history, that means that he is very invested in what's going on that week, because there are a few courses that highlight that. So that is a prime example of one. So
yeah, I want to cut you off really quick, because what you said was correct, and I for sure can look everybody, including yourself, in the eye and look at the red numbers that Jordan Spieth has had. But the eyeball test over the last 4 weeks of playing says that those mistakes are really closing in. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to go out there and win the tournament. That's out of the question right now. And if he does, I will be running around this apartment complex naked. But if he can put it together, and to your point, just close the gap on the mistakes, cards are there.
I will say this. I would highly recommend in my personal opinion, this is what I'm going to do as far as Jordan Spieth goes. I will not be betting him this week. I will be watching him. If he does well this week, then that means I will likely, if not potentially, bet him for the Masters. But I think unless he shows up this week and shows me something, if he like misses a cut this week, oh no, I got nothing on Jordan next week. There's no chance. But like if he wants to pop off and finish top 30, yeah, sure. I'll sign me up for some Jordan Spieth next week. But until then, I wouldn't recommend going to him this week. Make sure that he's going to be all set for the for the tournament. I will mention Denny McCarthy. He's kind of he's got high upside putting alongside the approach play. The issue with Denny is that he really isn't very good off the tee. If he's like a net average or a net zero off the tee player week to week, that's usually when he finishes like top 15 to top 20 on a tournament. Based on recent form, he's gained on approach and putting in 5 straight starts, but has only gained off the tee in 2 of those events. In those 2 events, he was both top 10. But I think with 4 top 20 finishes in his last 5 starts, he's a solid play to go back to this week, again at 9,000. So, do you have a top 3 in this range?
It's a scattered top 3, honestly, because it's all about upside. Yeah. I think Denny McCarthy is number 1. I think Jordan Spieth is number 2, and I think Daniel Berger is number 3. And it's because of all the reasons that you mentioned. Akshay has been good, but also kind of scattered at times. Hideki Matsuyama has not been really consistent. That range confuses me, but I do think we see one of those guys finishing top 5 and 2 of them finishing top 10.
Yeah, Akshay gained like 19 strokes gained total here last year, which was crazy. I think he gained almost 8.5 strokes on approach. So if he does anything similar to that again, he's going to be contending. I think my top 3 is probably Denny, Akshay. It's either Berger or Matsuyama. I'll say Berger. I think just in the case of not being as injury concerned, but it's very close between those 2 for me. So, all right, sweet. With that, into the 8K range we go. We got Keith Mitchell 8,900 down to Sam Stevens at 8,000. Wow, he's expensive.
Yeah, Sam Stevens though has historically done really well at this course, but there's one guy that I'm targeting. It is the cashmere mint pants wearing Keith Mitchell. I think Keith Mitchell has really cleaned up his game, especially last week at a course that I said he could have gone wire to wire, and he was really darn close. He started off at T1 on Thursday. Historically, he's got an 8th place, a 23rd place, 45, 37, averaging finishing placement all across the board of just about 42. And if you're giving me this at a price where a guy that we watched him last week nuke the ball, really good approach play, a course much similar to this one where that around the green play is really mitigated or really minimized, this could be an event that I think he really takes off about. If he's as accurate as he was last week, I envision him finishing in the top 40. Not saying he can go out and win. Obviously, he has the skills to do so. I don't think it's unreasonable that he finishes inside the top 40. So 8,900 inside 9,000, you're giving me a top 40 finish. I'm taking that to the bank.
Yeah, I mean, Keith Mitchell is usually like a $7,500 price golfer. So I don't love the $1,400 or so price bump. I agree. I think he'll finish top 40, but I think you can get similar upside with guys lower down the board. Like JT Poston's an interesting option. He's starting to become a good buy again. He's gained with the putter in either 2 or 3 straight starts after he lost in 10 straight. He's still gaining on approach, and at worst is a net 0 player off the tee. He's much better than that, but at the absolute worst. Basically, as long as he's putting, he's going to be a fun option that'll probably finish top 40 here in Texas. I also don't love a lot of this range, if I'm being 100% honest with you. I think Siwoo could be an interesting play with his irons, but his putter is super bad. I think Maverick McNeely might be one of the better options in this range, just based on his iron play and his short game. But again, off the tee might be a challenge, but it'll get mitigated this week. But then there's guys like Sam Burns, who I think is a horrible option. His approach play has been brutal. He's lost in 10 of his last 11 starts. His putting has been average at best, gaining in 5 of the 11 of those starts. And there's nothing that sticks out up to Warren Burns, the 8,600. He is by far one of the worst priced options in this range. So there's just not a lot of great guys I love in here outside of probably McNeely and Poston and that's if you want to take those chances. You can go Mitchell, but he's almost 9K for me. He's expensive.
I don't think it's unreasonable, actually. I know it looks money-wise, but compared to the field where you're getting that, your top guys 10,800, you have to be able to take these middling guys and go up. So
I mean, I just like, if you're asking me for the differentials between like a Maverick McNeely and a Keith Mitchell, or like a Ben Griffin and a Keith Mitchell, I don't see much, which is why like the $1,000 price difference between them is where I have that disconnect in my head. If you can get to him price wise, I understand it, because like I think he's going to be good this week. I just don't like the extra $1,000, especially with the way my lineup fits. What doesn't make a lot of sense. All right, on to the 7K range we go.
let's do it.
All right, Ben Griffin 7,900 down to, oh my God, there's a lot of them. Rio Hitsasune 7,000.
Well, funny enough, I do like him. But first, I want to talk about Ben Griffin, who I highlighted as .0076 shots or OWGR points away from a bid at Masters. And if he wants to drive down Magnolia Wayne, he needs a win. Last week at Houston, he did finish T11 for the last 36 holes of scoring, which is a really good stretch of golf. Over the week, he was 4th in strokes gained approach, 3rd in greens and regulation, 3rd from tee to green. And he did fire 39th here with a couple 69. So he does know how to score here, does know how to play well, and he's been really consistent all across the board. I also think Gary Woodland is an interesting bet. He is going to be miraculously, and I mean miraculously, tipped this week. So I would not bet him in DFS. You can definitely do your sportsbook bets where you actually can make money. Historically, over the course, he has done well at this event with 2 top 10s with an average finishing placement of 7 over the last 7 years. So he does do well here. He will be historically tipped for a 7,800 price golfer. Along with that, I do think Ricky Fowler is another guy to watch. I mentioned earlier he needs to win as well. This is an event he can do it. But last guy I will mention is Rio Hitsasune. Guy played really well last week. Or in the last 2 weeks rather, at Valspar, finishing 4th, made the cut at the Texas Children's Houston Open, which is a really kind of a comp event. Obviously, everything in Texas is relatively the same, with 3 sub-70 rounds. If he can do that here and he can get 8 or 9 under, you're putting it at a top 50, made cut at the minimum. I absolutely love it. His odds were actually very inflated on the sports book, so I couldn't really take it. But he's a guy that I genuinely think could make the cut this week if you can find it on a Wednesday.
Yeah, I like a few of those names. I agree. I think Griffin will be a good choice this weekend at 7,900. I like his odds. I kind of highlighted him in terms of Cashmere Keith similarity, and he's $1,000 less. So save yourself a little money. You mentioned Gary Woodland. He gained almost 9 strokes putting last week, by the way, in Houston. That's his second best putting performance of his career. He very often does not gain 2 strokes with a putter, let alone 9. So I don't see him replicating it 2 weeks in a row. Jack highlighted he's got 2 top 10s here. He's also got 3 missed cuts, but he's got a few red flags, and I can't rely on the 1 finish in Houston and 2 finishes here in San Antonio to really sit there and be like, I need Gary Woodland in a lineup, especially at 7,800 when you can spend the extra 100 and get Ben Griffin. I will highlight Justin Rose. In his last 6 starts, he's either missed a cut or finished top 15. He's a great short game player, and he's slightly below average player off the tee, mostly because he's not very accurate off the tee. Most of his missed cuts are on courses where you need to hit the ball super straight and super long, and you don't really have any room to miss, which won't apply here in San Antonio. So I think with that, combined with good short game play, will set him up pretty well for this course. So I don't hate him as an option. I'll highlight Charlie Hoffman. In his last 14 starts here in San Antonio, he has just 1 cut, 3 finishes outside of T22, and 10 finishes inside of the top 20. His putter has been hemorrhaging him as of recent, but you really just need a made cut out of him. I want to say 7,400 if my memory's right. So if you think he's going to make a cut, then he's a decent option at 7,400. But again, he is a course history guy, not a recent form guy. So bear that in mind. There is Lee Hodges, who I called him out last week for having a great short game play, and all he did was go out, play well, and finish T11. So there's no reason to not go back to him. I expect a lot of the same this week. And if he gains across the bag like last week, I expect another good week and hopefully a nice top 40 finish. He played here twice, and 2 years ago he finished T6. Last year he missed the cut. So if you're telling me he's got top 5 upside, I don't hate him. I want to say he is 7,200, 7,300, maybe 75 even. But the point being, he's on the lower end of the 7K range, so I think he's an option. Cool. All right, with that 6K range we go. Alejandro Tosti down to Rafael Campos at 6,000.
Literally the only guy I would even consider is Alejandro Tosti. There's some trash, not trash, but just don't fit the mold here. Alejandro Tosti had a new caddy last week, and the quote of the week came from, caddy, do you like Driver? And his only response is, you better F and say you love Driver. He finished fifth place and had a tremendous scoring event. Now, in comparison, this is a pretty good comp course. So if you're giving me a guy that finished fifth place with 4 sub-70 rounds and 2 65s, that's a guy I think at 6,900 you take a flyer on. Now you have Quade Cummins there, who was in here, tremendous iron player, who was on our podcast for different reasons beforehand, but now he's proven himself as a worthy player.
Yep.
I think you have Pot Geeter here, who sucked last week and even worse the week before. There's no shape in the world where I can get to him in an event that can get to 20 under. And just there's a bunch of names that could randomly pop off, but nothing that I would be willing to stake my reputation on.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually agree with you on a lot of these. I thought Toasty was a really good option just as far as his iron play and basically having the ability to contend in this kind of a field. I have Aldrich Potgetter listed as a potential flyer if you want to go crazy. I said that accuracy isn't the most important thing at this event. Therefore, he's an option if you want to get really crazy. I wouldn't recommend it. He's lost on approach each of his last 6 starts. He's a really high risk. I don't see a lot of upside, but he could make a cut and finish, T65 if he puts together a good Thursday and Friday, just based on basically hitting the ball 340 yards.
Yeah, just for reference, this event will have a lot of ties come cut. So he could finish 71st and make the cut. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's true. One guy I will mention, and he is at the minimum price, is Kaito Onishi. He's missed the cut on the number last week, but he actually gained strokes total. He's gained on approach in 3 straight starts. He's been picking up at least half a stroke a round in each of his last 12 rounds. So he's been gaining on the field. Don't hear what I'm saying in that he's a good option. But if you want to pick a lot of guys that are highly priced because the field is pretty top heavy, you're going to need somebody in the low 6K range. And I think Kaito Onishi is not the worst option. So that is how I'm going to say that. So just so that way Jack understands where I'm coming from as well as the podcast. So still Toasty 1, probably Onishi 2, Potgetter 3 for me in terms of the 3 guys I mentioned. So sweet. All right. With that, Jack, let's get into DraftKings lineups here for the what are we? Valero, right? Gosh, that was a long episode.
Yep. My first one is Corey Connors 10,100. I have Daniel Berger 9,200. Denny McCarthy 9 flat. I have Ben Griffin 7,900. Rio Hisasune 7,000 and Quade Cummins 6,700.
There you go. My DraftKings lineup looks quite different. I have Ludwig Gobert, 10,800. Tommy Fleetwood, 10,700. Ricky Fowler, 7,700. Lee Hodges, 7,500. Justin Rose, 7,300. And Kaito Onishi at 6,000.
My FanDuel is pretty similar. Well, actually, it's not. Wow. That was a change. I have Corey Connors, 11,800. I have Denny McCarthy, 10,700. Daniel Berger, 10,400. Jacob Bridgman, 9,600, Ben Griffin, 9,500, and Rio Hisasune, 8 flat.
There you go. I have 4 names that are the same, 2 that are different. Ludwig Gobert, 12,000. Tommy Fleetwood, 11,800. Akshay Bhatia, 10,800. Lee Hodges, 9,200. Alex Smalley, 9,100. And then Kaito Onishi at 7,000 flat. So, all right, on to bets. How many bets you got this week, Jack?
I have 6 bets, and they're all baby bets. They're all safe. I want as much money and as much capital as I physically can get going into my favorite week of the entire year. So nobody come at me for my 6 safe bets. But number one, Ben Griffin, top 45 and ties is minus 120. Corey Connors, top 30 is minus 163. Tommy Fleetwood, top 30 is minus 175. Jordan Spieth, Corey Connors, and Ricky Fowler made cut is plus 116. Kind of worried about Rick, but I think we'll make it work. Ben Griffin and Corey Connors made cut is minus 136. And Denny McCarthy and Daniel Berger made cut is minus 145. I assume every single person that I just named in the last 18 seconds will make the cut, and I hope to make some money come next week.
To be fair, if they make the cut, if all the guys you mentioned make the cut, then I will probably win a little bit of money too.
Yeah, and made cut odds are only available on Bet365 as of now. Go ahead and sponsor us because you're our favorite sportsbook.
Yeah, we do all of our betting through Bet365. They tend to just have the odds up earlier. They have everything that we possibly need as far as betting for golf. So it's always a great one that we like to use. As far as my bets go, I've got Tommy Fleetwood top 20 at plus 100. I've got Tommy Fleetwood over Ludwig Aubert at plus 115. I've got Bud Cauley over Tom Kim at plus 100. We didn't even highlight Bud Cauley or Tom Kim. Bud Cauley's been playing really well since the start of the swing season. Statistically, since the beginning of September, I think he's the 5th best player in this field in strokes gained total. So I like the idea of him over Tom Kim, who's been not playing his best golf of all time. I like JT Poston over Sam Burns at minus 120. I've talked plenty of trash already on Sam Burns. And then I like Lee Hodges, top 40 is plus 100. So those are my 5 bets. None of them are in the minus except for Poston over Burns. So not great when you're getting ready for the Masters week next week, that's for sure. On to wild cards. What are we looking at this week, Jack?
Yeah, I have Corey Connors to finish 7th or better at plus 300. He's done it 5 of his 11 times already on this year. And if you really break that down, it's 5 of 10 times. So 50% on the marker, has won this event twice, has a 14th place, 2 other top 26s. On top of that, he does really well here. And I think if his irons can do everything that it's been doing for the last 8 weeks of golf, we're going to hit a 3-1 odds in the wild card. So give me that all day, every day.
There you go. For my wild card, I'm picking one that, again, I said I was keeping an eye on earlier. I got Jordan Spieth top 10 at plus 280. Would I have preferred to make this number top 20? Absolutely, but his top 20 odds are like plus 125, which is so dumb. So nevertheless, we're going to do his top 10 odds at plus 280. So winners, what you got?
I got 3. I got 3 big hitters. I have Corey Connors at 17-1. I'm looking for a 3-peat this week, build a lot of momentum going into next week where I really like him. Denny McCarthy 30-1. I think that putter really is going to elevate him over the field. And then I have Ben Griffin 61. He's pissed. He's going to come out trying to fire at every single pin he physically can.
That's fair. My winners, I got Tommy Fleetwood at 15-1. This seems like the type of event Tommy Fleetwood just like randomly pull out a win at, Jack. I don't know. I mean, like the week before the Masters when he doesn't really like need to because all he's going to do is prep for next week. It just seems like a Tommy Fleetwood event. I also have Keith Mitchell at 37-1. And then I'd have Justin Rose at 85-1. Again, he's prepping for next week, so I think that he could be an interesting option. So, all right, with that, that is the Valero. I'm sure Jack will show up next week in all green. Just super excited for the random golf tournament that we seem to have going on next week. I don't really know much about it, but I'm sure Jack will happily highlight every hole by name.
Every granny.
Yeah, he knows way too much about the golf course. I'm sure he named the tree that fell a few years back in the storm. So we'll see. Jack will be all over it. But with that is the Valero. I would not recommend betting too heavy. I would save up for next week. But if you are going to bet, follow a few of our bets, and we'll help you.
Bet responsibly. This is not gambling advice. This is just our opinion.
Yeah, this is just our opinion. But if you follow our bets, we are both up on the season, and we'll get you some hopefully some money in order for Masters week. But with that, we'll leave you to it, and we'll see you next week for the Masters. Deuces.